Please open this before I make the biggest mistake of my life. There is something I have been trying to say to you for longer than you realize. Something I have typed and deleted. Something I have rehearsed in my head during the quietest hours of the night, only to lose my courage when the moment finally came. I don't know whether you will believe me. I don't know whether you will forgive me. I don't even know whether you still have a place for me in your heart. But I know one thing. If I stay silent now, I may lose you forever. And that is the thought that has been haunting me. Please don't close this message. Please don't assume that you already know what I am going to say. Please don't judge these words by the mistakes I made before them. Just give me a few minutes. Because there is a truth inside me that has become too heavy to carry. I have spent so much time pretending that I was fine without you. I wasn't. I have smiled when people asked about you. I have changed the subject when your name appeared in conversations. I have acted as though the distance between us didn't matter. I convinced myself that silence was easier than honesty. I convinced myself that walking away was strength. I convinced myself that if I waited long enough, my feelings would disappear. But they didn't. They became quieter. Deeper. More painful. And eventually, they became impossible to ignore. There were nights when I opened our old conversations and stared at the screen without typing anything. There were moments when I wanted to send you the simplest message in the world. Are you okay? But behind those 3 words was everything I was afraid to admit. I miss you. I still think about you. I still wonder whether you think about me. I still remember the little things. And I still wish I could go back to the moment when everything between us began changing. Maybe I could have spoken differently. Maybe I could have listened instead of defending myself. Maybe I could have told you what was happening inside my heart instead of expecting you to somehow understand it. Maybe I could have stayed. Maybe you wouldn't have had to wonder whether you mattered. Because you did. You mattered more than I ever knew how to explain. And perhaps that is the cruelest part. I loved you in a way I didn't know how to communicate. I cared about you while behaving like I didn't. I missed you while pretending I was moving forward. I was afraid of losing you while doing the very things that pushed you farther away. And now I am standing at a point where one decision could change everything. That's why I am asking you to open this. Not because I want to manipulate your emotions. Not because I want to force you to come back. Not because I expect you to forget everything. I am asking because there is something I should have told you before making another decision. A decision that could permanently change the direction of my life. And before I take that step, I need you to know the truth. You may think I have already moved on. You may have seen my silence and interpreted it as indifference. You may have watched me continue my life and assumed that I no longer cared. But appearances have never told the entire story. Sometimes the person who looks the calmest is fighting the loudest battle internally. Sometimes the person who says, "I'm okay," is terrified of admitting that they are not. Sometimes someone walks away not because they stopped loving you, but because they don't know how to face what loving you requires. I was that person. I ran from conversations I should have had. I avoided questions that demanded honest answers. I hid behind pride. I used distance as protection. And every time I convinced myself that I was protecting my heart, I was actually creating another wall between us. I thought time would solve everything. I was wrong. Time doesn't automatically heal what honesty never addressed. It doesn't erase words that were never spoken. It doesn't return moments that were wasted. And it certainly doesn't guarantee that two people will remain available forever. That realization came to me slowly. At first, I barely noticed it. Then it started appearing everywhere. In songs. In places. In ordinary conversations. In the quiet before sleep. In the first moments after waking. I would reach for my phone without thinking. And for a second, would expect to see your name. Then reality would return. And there would be nothing. Just silence. That silence started teaching me things I had refused to understand while you were still close. I learned that having someone in your life is not the same as appreciating their presence. I learned that love cannot survive forever on assumptions. I learned that saying later too many times can eventually become never. And I learned something even more frightening. You can lose someone without ever having one dramatic goodbye. Sometimes people disappear gradually. One unanswered message. One postponed conversation. One misunderstanding. One moment of pride. One decision to wait until tomorrow. And suddenly tomorrow arrives. And they are no longer waiting. That is what scares me now. Not rejection. Not embarrassment. Not even heartbreak. I am afraid of reaching a future where I finally become brave enough to tell you everything. Only to discover that I became brave too late. Maybe you have already started rebuilding your life. Maybe someone else has entered your world. Maybe your heart has finally found peace without me. If that's true, I will have to accept it. But I cannot accept losing you without at least telling you why I disappeared. You deserve that explanation. You deserved it a long time ago. There were things happening inside me that I didn't know how to explain. I was confused about what I wanted. I was afraid of commitment. Afraid of vulnerability. Afraid that if I showed you how deeply I cared, you would have the power to hurt me. So I did something incredibly foolish. I tried to care less. I thought if I made myself emotionally distant, I would become safer. Instead, I became someone I didn't recognize. You probably wondered why I suddenly changed. Why the warmth disappeared. Why the messages became shorter. Why conversations that once lasted for hours became awkward. Why I seemed to have endless excuses. The truth is, I was fighting myself. And unfortunately, you experienced the consequences of a battle you didn't start. I wish I could erase that. I can't. But I can finally tell you the truth. You were never the problem. You were never too much. You were never asking for too much love. You were never too emotional. You were never too complicated. I was simply too afraid to give you the honesty you deserved. And now I am afraid of something else. I'm afraid I am about to make the biggest mistake of my life. There is a choice in front of me. Everyone around me seems to think it is simple. They tell me to move forward. They tell me to stop looking backward. They tell me that life doesn't wait for anyone. They tell me that I should choose the practical option. They tell me that emotions cannot build a future. Maybe they are right about some things. But they don't know what I know. They don't know what it feels like to meet someone who changes the definition of home inside your mind. They don't know what it feels like to lose a person and still find traces of them in everything. They don't know how many times I have compared ordinary moments to moments I experienced with you. They don't know how many times I have thought, you would have laughed at this. They don't know how often I have wanted to tell you something and then remembered that I no longer had the right to simply reach for you. And they definitely don't know what happened the last time I saw something that reminded me of you. It wasn't dramatic. There was no movie-like moment. No thunder. No perfect music. Just a quiet realization. I realized that I had been trying to convince myself that I could replace a connection that I never properly understood. And I couldn't. You were not simply someone I liked. You became part of the way I experienced the world. A certain song could bring you back. A certain street could bring you back. A certain time of night could bring you back. Even silence could bring you back. And suddenly I understood why forgetting you had never worked. Because I wasn't remembering a person. I was remembering a version of myself. The version that existed when I felt understood. The version that laughed without thinking. The version that could talk about dreams without feeling foolish. The version that believed love didn't always have to be complicated. You saw parts of me that I kept hidden from everyone else. And instead of appreciating that gift, I became afraid of it. Because being truly seen is terrifying when you are used to hiding. You noticed my silence. You noticed changes in my mood. You noticed the things I didn't say. And sometimes that made me uncomfortable. Not because you were wrong. But because you were right. You could see through me. I couldn't hide behind confidence. I couldn't pretend everything was perfect. You somehow knew when I was hurting even when I smiled. And instead of letting you closer, I pushed you away. I wish I could explain how much I regret that. There are apologies that feel too small for the damage they follow. I'm sorry is easy to say. But I don't want to give you an easy apology. I want to give you the truth. I was scared. I was selfish. I was confused. I was proud. And I thought I had more time. That last one hurts the most. I thought there would always be another conversation. Another chance. Another message. Another opportunity to fix what I had broken. I treated your patience like it was permanent. I treated your presence like it was guaranteed. I didn't understand that even the most patient heart eventually becomes tired. Maybe you reached that point. Maybe you finally said to yourself, I cannot keep waiting for someone who doesn't know what they want. If you did, I understand. And I don't blame you. But please, before you close the door completely, let me tell you what I never had the courage to say. I didn't leave because I stopped loving you. I left because loving you forced me to confront parts of myself I wasn't ready to face. And instead of becoming better, I ran. That was my mistake. Not yours. You were not difficult to love. I was difficult to understand. Even to myself. I spent so much time analyzing everything that I forgot to feel. I questioned every emotion. Every possibility. Every future. I tried to calculate something that was never supposed to be calculated. Love isn't a mathematical equation. You cannot guarantee the outcome. You cannot remove every risk. At some point, you have to decide whether the connection is worth being vulnerable for. And I was too afraid. Until now. Now I finally understand what fear costs. Fear doesn't always protect you. Sometimes fear quietly steals the very thing you were trying to protect. And I think that is what happened to me. I protected my heart. And lost the person I wanted to share it with. So if this message reaches you at the right moment, I hope you pause. I hope you don't immediately decide what it means. I hope you let me finish. Because there is one more truth. The decision I am about to make could take me somewhere you may never be able to reach. It could create a distance that cannot easily be crossed. And I don't want to make that decision while carrying an unanswered question. The question is simple. Did you ever truly stop loving me? Or did you simply stop waiting for me? There is a difference. A huge difference. Maybe your heart still remembers. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe somewhere inside you, there is still a small part of our story that never received an ending. I don't know. And that uncertainty is why I am here. Not demanding. Not begging. Just finally being honest. If you have moved on, tell me. If you don't want me anymore, tell me. If I hurt you beyond repair, tell me. If you found someone else, I will respect that. But please don't let my silence be the reason you believe I never cared. Because I did. More than I showed. More than I admitted. More than I knew how to handle. There were moments when I wanted to call you. There were nights when I nearly came back. There were days when I typed messages and deleted them because pride whispered that I shouldn't be the one to reach out. Pride told me. Wait for them. Fear told me. They don't care anymore. Doubt told me. You'll only embarrass yourself. But something deeper kept saying. You never finished the conversation. And that voice became impossible to ignore. Maybe that is why you are reading this now. Maybe not because destiny is forcing anything. Maybe simply because two people who once mattered deeply to each other deserve an honest conversation before life moves them in different directions. I don't know what happens after this. And for the first time, I am not going to pretend that I do. I don't know whether we will find our way back. I don't know whether you will forgive me. I don't know whether the timing is still right. I don't know whether the damage can be repaired. But I know I would regret staying silent. I would regret allowing fear to make one final decision for me. Because there is something worse than hearing no. It is spending years wondering what might have happened if you had simply been honest. I don't want that future. I don't want to look back one day and realize I had one final opportunity to tell you the truth. And chose silence again. So here it is. I still care about you. I still remember you. I still wonder about you. And despite everything that happened, a part of me still believes our story deserves one honest conversation. Not a promise. Not a fantasy. Not a guarantee. Just honesty. Maybe we need closure. Maybe we need forgiveness. Maybe we need to start over. Maybe we need to finally say goodbye properly. But whatever happens, I don't want the ending to be silence. Because silence is what created this distance in the first place. And I am tired of letting silence speak for me. You once asked me what I was afraid of. I didn't answer honestly. Now I will. I was afraid that you would matter too much. And you did. I was afraid that losing you would hurt. It did. I was afraid that if I showed you my heart, you might break it. Instead, I broke my own heart by refusing to show it. And now I am standing here with nothing left to hide behind. So please, before you make your own decision about me, before you decide that our story is finished, before you close the last door, remember this. There was someone who loved you imperfectly. Someone who made mistakes. Someone who didn't always know how to communicate. Someone who ran when they should have stayed. Someone who stayed silent when they should have spoken. Someone who let pride speak louder than love. But that person finally understood. Too late, perhaps. But honestly. And that person is asking you one final thing. Don't answer because you feel guilty. Don't answer because you feel sorry. Don't answer because of memories alone. Answer only if something inside you still wants to know what could happen if we finally stopped running from the truth. Because I am done running. I don't know whether you will open the door. But I needed to knock. I don't know whether you will answer. But I needed to call. I don't know whether our future still has space for both of us. But I needed to ask before I walked into a future without you. Because tomorrow I may have to make a decision. And before I make it, I needed you to know that my heart never became as indifferent as my silence made it look. There is still a question hanging between us. A question that neither of us answered. And perhaps that question is the reason this story still feels unfinished. So if you're still here, if you're still reading, then maybe you already know what that question is. Maybe you've been carrying it too. Maybe you've wondered whether I ever looked back. I did. More times than you know. And every time I looked back, I saw the same thing. A door I should have walked through. A conversation I should have started. A hand I should have held. A person I should have appreciated. And a heart I should never have taken for granted. I cannot change yesterday. But I can change what I do next. And that is why I am asking you to stay for one more moment. Because I haven't told you the most important part yet. The reason I believe I am about to make the biggest mistake of my life has nothing to do with another person. It has nothing to do with money. Nothing to do with distance. Nothing to do with what everyone else thinks. It has to do with a choice I made when I believed I could live without answering what my heart had been asking me for months. And now that choice is standing directly in front of me. I can move forward. I can close the chapter. I can tell myself that what happened between us belonged to the past. Or I can finally choose honesty. And honesty begins with one sentence I should have said a long time ago. I never stopped caring about you. I just became very good at pretending that I did. And maybe that is the truth you needed to hear. Maybe it is the truth I needed to say. Either way, thank you for opening this. Now please keep reading. Because the next thing I need to tell you is the part one have been most afraid to admit.